Hi there. Welcome to the Imperfect Prophet podcast for women who wonder. Frankly, as we go through life, I'm sure we wonder about a great deal. First as little kids, then as adolescents, then as young women, then as transitional women. What are we calling ourselves these days? And then you get to this point in life, or my point in life, when you're postmenopausal and wondering what's next. Wondering if the parade already passed you by. Join me, Wonder Wendy. I'm going to be your host as we talk about some of these unique challenges that face women today in a new millennium, going through menopause and trying to live a rich, full life. There might even be a few men and younger women that want to listen in too. That's okay. But there's a roller coaster and we're all on it. And I'm going to be your guide to help you figure out when you should close your eyes, when you should hang on, and maybe we'll explore some ideas for what works for you if it doesn't work for me, or vice versa. So join the conversation, pick up your favorite beverage, and we'll talk to you soon. Welcome to the Imperfect Prophet.
Today's episode is coming to you from Newark Airport. You might see a lot going on behind me. Rolling suitcases, there's footsteps, you might hear that. There's the low hum. A few minutes ago, there was an alarm, so who knows what's going to happen. Airports are strange places when you think about it. No one is ever really there. We're all between where we've been and where we're going. And right now, that's where I find myself, literally and metaphorically. And that feels exactly right, because waiting has always mattered to humans. Long before there were calendars or countdowns, people noticed this darkest stretch of the year and understood it as a time to slow down, to gather, to wait. They lit fires, they lit candles, they told stories, they watched the sky. Not because they were certain what would come next, but because they trusted that light returns. Yule marked the turning of the sun. Hanukkah lights one candle at a time, never all at once. Earth-based traditions understood that darkness wasn't, failure. It was a pause, a pensive time, a listening time, a not yet time. And I love this part. The word Advent comes from the Latin adventus, which simply means, arrival, approach, the coming of something. It wasn't originally religious at all. It was described as the arrival of the emperor or a long anticipated event, a moment that required preparation. In other words, Advent didn't begin as doctrine. It began as a feeling, that sense that something is on its way, even when you can't see it yet. The Christian calendar eventually gave that ancient waiting a name and called it Advent, a season marked not by arrival, but by waiting, not by answers, but by expectation. And that's maybe why sitting in an airport, a place built entirely around waiting, feels like the right place to record this episode. Although I am questioning my choices. Hey there, and welcome back to The Imperfect Prophet, a podcast for women who wonder. I'm your host, Wonder Wendy. Now, I've been traveling again. I know it feels like I've been traveling all the time. This time I ventured back east to attend a celebration of life for my uncle. You may remember back in October, I recorded an episode about holding on and letting go. In that episode, I talked about him, a lifelong runner, a minister, a storyteller, and an enthusiastic liver of life. In his life, he ran almost 200 marathons. Over the last few years, his times, they got slower. He was moving up in years. But he loved being the oldest competitor and the thrill of completing the race. Now, when the pain of cancer grew too great, he embraced hospice care. As my cousins beautifully said, he ran through the pearly gates. In this, he set a record. Just 2 hours from admission to his passing, the hospice workers declared it a record. This weekend, we gathered as a family to celebrate his life and his contributions to the world. And now I'm here, waiting for a flight back to my adopted home of Phoenix. And it's a little over a week before Christmas. Standing in the overlap of grief, gratitude, memory, and motion, which honestly feels like Advent in human form. Now, Advent doesn't ask us to hurry towards Christmas. It asks us to stay present in the in-between. It reminds us that transformation doesn't usually happen in grand arrivals, but in long stretches of waiting. Waiting rooms, hospital rooms, funeral homes, airports. Like a child hoping to pass the marshmallow test, waiting can be the kind that changes us, whether we want it or not. Now, as I was flying into Newark last week, I started thinking about how much this airport has changed. I remember traveling through Newark in the it was the late 1990s. And compared to today, it was scarcely more than a glorified bus terminal for bus. Ugh. Have another cup of coffee, Wendy. Glorified bus terminal that happened to offer air service. It was all cut rate airlines. And I was stuck there because of a summer storm that delayed literally everything. Now, in my memory, that space was a really narrow, gray hallway with a door that led to the tarmac. There weren't enough seats, and I was sitting on the floor, well, just like I am right now, but I was leaning against a wall, praying my flight would happen eventually. It was so gray, kind of like purgatory, if you imagined it. I've talked a lot about memory in recent episodes, and sometimes I wonder if I'm repeating myself or simply emphasizing a truth. Because here's the thing, this airport is no longer the one I remember. The last few times I've flown through Newark, I've been struck by how light it is. So many windows, comfortable seating areas, food options that resemble an upscale food court. It's modern, it's expansive. Well, dare I say, pleasant? Same airport location, but completely different experience. Which made me wonder, how many things in our lives do we still think of as gray simply because we haven't really looked at them lately? This season, both personally and on the Christian calendar, is Advent, a time marked not by arrival, but by waiting, not by answers, but by expectation. And the more I sit with that, the more I realize something. Advent didn't invent waiting. Long before Christian calendars, people across cultures marked this darkest stretch of the year as a time to slow down, to gather, to wait. And like I said, they lit fires, they lit candles, they told stories. They watched the sky. Not because they were certain. Again, because they trusted the light would return. Now, Yule marked the turning of the sun, the shortest day of the year, the longest night of the year. And we waited because we knew it would come back. There would be another harvest. Advent simply gave language to something the human soul already knew. That the most important work happens when nothing seems to be happening at all. And maybe that's why sitting here in an airport, a place entirely built around waiting, feels like the right place. Now, there's a favorite picture of me at the age of 3 or so, waving goodbye to my parents as they headed off on a trip. Now, what's notable, and why it matters here, is that I had climbed to the top of a 3-foot chain link fence to wave at them. That fence was the only thing separating us from the tarmac where that plane was boarding. Clearly, my brother must have breached that boundary to take the picture from the other side. Now, this was the late 1960s. Burlington International Airport was small. Security measures virtually non-existent. It was international because there were flights to and from Montreal. Ironically, while it still holds the title international today, there are no international flights. Even small airports now have layers of security that would have been unimaginable then. My daughter attended Baylor University in Waco, Texas. That airport had 2 gates, though I only ever saw one used. Yes, it had TSA, which opened just in time for the next flight to Dallas, which was a boomerang trip repeated several times a day, the only commercial option. Progress is kind of funny like that. Now, I had a high school chemistry teacher who used to call Us, meaning me and any of you or my peers who graduated in the mid-'80s, the microwave generation. He said we wanted everything immediately. Now, I sometimes wonder what he'd think about this generation, my kids and my grandkids, who expect an Amazon order to arrive by drone minutes after clicking buy now. That teacher was a peer of one of my brothers, so I can calculate that he's probably around his 80th birthday right now. Which reminds me, that brother who went to school with that chemistry teacher studied engineering at a time when calculators were prohibitively expensive. He did all of his engineering complex calculations using a slide rule. If you never used one, you can go research that. My brother and I were texting the other day, and he lamented, yet again, because I've heard this many times from him, that engineers are no longer taught how to properly use that all-powerful, non-electronic tool. And I reminded him that he had that same lament when I was in school, back in the 80s. Then we started getting those little disposable or practically disposable electronic calculators. They were so basic that I could basically add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and that was it. He did not find my reminding him of that nearly as amusing as I did. He's now convinced that artificial intelligence will be the downfall of society. Maybe he's right. We hear of lawyers being thrown out of court for poor citations because they got them from AI. Teachers are questioning whether students actually understand the material they submit. AI is powerful. It can help us. It's easy. It's seductive. And yet, like relying on that calculator or any tool, if you stop using the muscle, you won't develop the muscle. Think about it when you've been bedridden because you've been sick and you don't walk for several days. When you stand up again, it's hard to move. Your legs don't want to work properly. When you don't develop a muscle, whether it's the brain or the body, it gets weak. You don't want to lose that strength, that ability to think. I know it's a wandering metaphor, but I think there's something there. Speed is not the same as formation, and Advent reminds us of that. So back to my uncle and the celebration of his life. There were somber moments. We were mourning his passing, and he was a minister after all. But there was also a great deal of laughter because he was a jokester and he was a storyteller. One of my favorite family stories is about him riding the train to my parents' wedding. He was 6 years old, and it was his first train ride. At least that's how I've heard the story. He was thrilled that the train car had both an interior drinking fountain and a bathroom. He went from one to the other repeatedly out of sheer delight, and a bit of necessity. Now, when I told that story to one of his daughters, she laughed and said, well, not much has changed. He was always known for carrying a gallon jug of fluids, whether it be coffee or water, and then holding it until desperation sent him racing to the restroom. Telling these stories is how he will continue to live on. Not through resumes, not through all of his accomplishments, which were numerous, all listed in the program, and many people attested to what he'd done in the community. But those stories that made people laugh at the funeral and the gatherings afterwards. Advent has always been honest about the world not being right yet. The extended hours of darkness leaves room for longing and desire, for those people we miss, for healing that hasn't come yet. Oh, for those endings that still ache, those pains that we can't shed. And yet it also dares to whisper hope. One of my favorite quotes comes from Julian of Norwich. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Not because everything was fixed, but because in the waiting, especially in the waiting, we are not abandoned. Now, Julian of Norwich was a 14th century English mystic who lived through plague and upheaval and still dared to write, "All shall be well," not as denial, but as trust in the middle of waiting. We need to remember that people have been through these trials before. They've trusted, they've had hope, they've reformed society. And we have the power to do that as well. Now, as I sit here in Newark, I see a lot of weary travelers. Some of them seem to actually be in their pajamas. But there's holiday cheer brushing up against the exhaustion, complaints about the state of travel, and fussy babies, and tired dogs. Complaints. But there are quiet moments of tenderness. I was walking down the way, and there was a woman looking at one of the monuments to a local university and desperately trying to take a selfie with it. And apparently she was one of their alumni, because I said, "Would you like me to take that picture?" She said, "Thank you." She was an alumni of that university and wanted her picture with their insignia. The holidays don't ask us to be joyful. They ask us to be honest. Most of us are carrying more than we let on. And those little moments of kindness, those little moments of understanding can change the world. So wherever you're listening to from today, wherever you're listening to me today, wow, that was an interesting sentence. Whether you're traveling, waiting, grieving, hoping, or simply catching your breath, I leave you with this question. What are you waiting for right now? And what might that waiting be forming in you? Advent reminds us that not yet is not the same as never. Just like that kid in the marshmallow test. All shall be well, not because it's finished, but because the story is still unfolding. I don't have my usual beverage, so I can't toast with you. I hope you have a beverage. And until next time, have a wonderful day. And as always, if this episode made you think of someone, this is your call to reach out to them and share this episode and maybe that cup of whatever you want to share. Happy holidays, and we'll talk to you soon.
Like what you heard here today? Then we should be friends. I suggest you join my Facebook group. It's a good way to connect. We can have a conversation, ask me questions, whatever you want to do. It is called the Wonderful Bucket List Life. That's Wonder-Full Bucket List Life. Be a bucket lister and join me on this adventure. Or you can go to my webpage, which is Wonder Wendy and Friends, join the mailing list, learn about the book I wrote, adventures that are coming up in the future, and other podcasts. I look forward to talking to you soon, and stay hydrated. Have a great day.